Made for Me, Chapter 1. 6 days later, Danielle arrived in Zurich at 4 in the afternoon and was in the city by 5. The water glimmered off Lake Zurich, sparkling in a way that felt welcoming. She arrived at her apartment and the owner, a female physician, took extraordinary care to explain the 4-inch thick metal door with 5 locks, the remote-controlled metal blinds, and the use of the private lift. Danielle thought the locks were overkill, but then the flat wasn't a first-floor apartment. It was the penthouse, replete with an indoor sauna, baby grand piano, and panoramic decks overlooking the lake. Nothing but the best for a gold trader at MRD, Danielle had been told. An hour later, a bubble of anticipation pushed against the walls of her chest when she saw the black Helvetica font spelling out Monroe's, the name Lonnie and Stephen had chosen as an ode to the famous American actress. Lonnie wasn't expecting her until tomorrow night, and Danielle anticipated a look of shock, a few screams, and a massive hug before Stephen gave her a sedate smile and brotherly embrace. Danielle gripped the brass handle on the black door of the restaurant and pulled. Her heart gave a bounce, and for a second she doubted she was in the right eatery. The room was empty, save for one couple who were rising from their seats. Then Stephen came around a corner, his look of shock lighting his fair skin. Danielle immediately put her index finger to her mouth, smiling wide. "Such an American thing to do," Stephen murmured, his arms wrapping around her. Striking in his dark gray suit, his full head of blonde hair slicked back and smooth, she kissed him back, feeling every ounce of affection for her best friend's husband. In quiet tones, he asked about her trip, if she was settled, and whether she was hungry. "Uneventful, yes, and starved," she replied. "Is she in the back?" "Of course, and hasn't had a good night's sleep since you called." "Sorry about that. It was short notice for all of us." She glanced around. "I don't want to cause a distraction." "You already have. I'll close the place after they leave." Danielle looked around the quiet room, taking in the white linen-covered tables and subdued sconces with soft yellow light shooting skyward. She was grateful she'd arrived on a slow night. A shriek made her jump. Lonnie came towards her, the white chef's apron smudged, her matching hat hiding a mane of obsidian black hair. "And a day early, you dog!" exclaimed Lonnie, giving her a bear hug and kisses. "I only had one chance to surprise you," Danielle retorted, embracing her friend, giving her another look up and down. She'd lost a little weight, and the circles under her eyes were darker than she'd remembered. But other than that, her nails were just as long and skin as toned and wrinkle-free as it had been a year before at their wedding. Only a woman of Hawaiian and Puerto Rican descent could look glamorous after a long day in the kitchen. "They must have wanted you bad," Lonnie said, slurring out the last word as she ushered her to a corner table. "They wanted the money bad," Danielle corrected. Lonnie sat across from Danielle and immediately fired off questions about the trip, her new apartment, and first impressions of the city. Danielle did her best to give succinct answers, recalling the neon blue walkways at the airport, the motion detection water fountains, and a metro service so clean she could eat off the seats. "Just wait until you use the metal bathroom stalls at the parks," Lonnie added mischievously. "You'll think you're in a spaceship, they are so high-tech. The seats fold down when you stand and the water goes on to encourage a good hand washing. And look for the needle holders on the right," added Stephen as he walked over holding plates of food. At Danielle's look of confusion, he continued, "Free disposal centers right at eye level." Danielle's eyes opened wide with disbelief. He nodded. "If you're going to do drugs, we Swiss want you to be clean about it." Danielle shook her head and laughed. "Welcome to Switzerland." 30 minutes later, the plates were mostly clean of food, and the tenor of the conversation moved from frivolous to serious. "Danielle, I'm so excited to have you here I can barely talk, but are you really sure this was and is the right thing?" Lonnie's fork hovered over her plate, and Danielle instinctively felt the worry behind her expressive eyes. Lonnie had been in her life since their sophomore year in college. She'd witnessed Danielle's mother's declining health after graduation and attended the funeral along with her parents. Only Lonnie knew of Danielle's constant struggles with loneliness, seeing through her illusion of working long hours to fill the time. "Was it the right thing?" Danielle mused aloud, pulling out the clip in her hair and massaging her scalp. "According to both my father and David, it was the only thing to do. Dad told me career advancement takes sacrifices, and he did so in a way that made me feel like a bird being heaved out of the nest." Lonnie cocked an eye. "Maybe you needed more shove than invitation." "There is a reason he always loved you," Danielle said in her driest tone. The unspoken opinion being that a fresh start might open my mind to men and a relationship, although he didn't say the words. Lonnie glanced at Stephen. They'd both seen what dating had gotten her during their time in college. "But you still weren't going to come?" he asked. Danielle replayed her father's demand and corresponding threat. "How long do you think you'll stay then?" "The length of my contract, 12 months, and if I want retirement money, they'll have to let me trade currency." Lonnie shook her head, dismissing the financial jargon as she always did. "Talking English, girl." Danielle started to explain, but Lonnie raised her glass. "I was kidding. I don't need or want to know what trading currency means. Here's to you in Zurich with us, because we will take you for as long as we can have you." Back in her apartment, Danielle unpacked only enough to get her through the week before she called her father. She updated him on Lonnie and Stephen, the restaurant, and did her best to describe the lake, the apartment in relation to the rest of the city. "Finally," he said tritely, "top floor, getting what you deserve, a place with a view and your favorite part of nature. Now," he said abruptly, changing his tone, "don't be calling me every night. You have better things to do." "Please," she growled in mock severity. "Being a phone call away gives me every right to check on you." Checking in is different than checking up on. I'm an adult, just in case you weren't aware. Besides, Sheila has already been over, set a schedule for taking me to dialysis, and arranged home food delivery. Still holding a dress on a hanger, Danielle felt slightly deflated. He sounded completely comfortable, but her surly teenage self wanted him to miss her, or at least pretend. "I'm going to suggest talking once a week on Sunday nights. You have work and your research always takes precedence. Plus, there's the time difference. That good for you?" Danielle was about to argue, but thought better of it. "I miss you, Dad," she said abruptly. "Good, you should." His trite response made her laugh, and with that, she said it was time for her to get to bed. Tomorrow starts early. "Don't forget to keep an eye out for a nice young man to date," her father remarked. She rolled her eyes. "Dad, I'm here to work, not get involved with some guy." "Don't make it so complex, Danielle. You don't have to fall in love to have a good time. Plus, think, you'll only be there for a year. Make the most of it." Danielle put the phone between her ear and shoulder as she slipped a St. John knit dress on the hanger. "Sure, Dad. I'll make the most of having a fling that won't interfere with work. Love is completely optional. How's that?" Her analogy produced a deep, hearty laugh, which turned into a hacking cough. "See what you've done to me?" he choked out. "Now go before you kill your old man from half the world away." Danielle said goodbye and put the sound of his torn-up lungs out of her memory. She finished setting out her clothes for the next day, put on her pajamas, and got into bed with her laptop on her thighs. Research and analysis would be her two bedtime companions for the foreseeable future, and that was all the fun she was going to imagine until something better fell into her lap.